Hey y'all, the captain here. We are just about the end of 2021 and ready to start a new year. And last year, you may recall, I did a video where I had a theme for this year. Last year, the theme was to start believing. Well, I think a lot of great things have come about. And certainly, I wasn't able to always believe in every moment. We all go through doubts. And even in spite of that, great things have happened. There's a lot of other things that I wish would happen, like, for instance, the end of this pandemic. Uh, wish I don't know, wish I knew what the next step in life was or anything or something like that. But maybe I didn't need a next step in life. I just know that I needed a new house, and look what I got. Here it is. We been in here since July, and it's been great. Well, what about the theme for 2022? Well, I think the theme that I came up with recently is to fear less. Notice I didn't say fearless in the sense that there's no fear. We all have fears. We all can't erase them completely in our heads. We can't just silence them. We can't silence doubts. We can't, just like talking about believing, I can't always silence my doubts about what I need to believe and for myself and for my life. I just have to, keep striving. And I guess it's kind of the same way with fear. But the thing to remember is we need to fear less. We need to not do what seems to be a prevailing theme in a lot of what we hear in the news and a lot of what we hear in our own heads, a lot of what we just seem to see going on around us and have been for too long. We need to not be so driven and motivated by fear. Fear is powerful. It's not a healthy power. It's something that a lot of people, politicians, people on TV, people in certain positions who are eager to, I guess, manipulate or motivate people. People who are things you hear about in the news. All of it, and those people seem to theme what they're communicating to us with fear. They're trying to induce fear. They're trying to make us fearful. They think that that will give them our attention. And sadly, it does. We tend to pay attention to a lot of things that invoke the fear bug because something in us, we feel that somehow if we don't pay attention to it, that it's going to be something we'll regret, or that it's going to be the end of us or something that we'll have missed. I have fears, and I don't need to watch the news to have them. I don't need to, listen to other people to have them. It's just my own head. It's just and especially if you're on the autism spectrum like me, there's certain area of the brain, that's able to process the fear bug, as it were. And that area of the brain, we don't tend to have as much of a reserve built up to be able to draw from in those times when we have to process something that makes us fearful. It's easy for us to be triggered. It's easy for us to, get overwhelmed when we have that trigger, when we experience something. It could be a sensory trigger, an environmental trigger. It can be something that triggers a memory, that are just, I just know what that's like because I just feel that in my gut. I feel, I just feel like maybe I don't see myself in the mirror, but I feel like maybe my skin is turning white. It's that kind of thing. I think when we read a lot of headlines about things like the pandemic, about things like maybe the world scene, maybe political situations, social situations, and tensions, that have built, especially over the last couple of years, or few years, it just seems like everything is themed around something that's meant to trigger a fear reaction in us. I'm not saying that we need to become so cynical to the point where we can't believe anything or act on anything. Or the sad thing is, so much of what we've read and what we've watched in news and on social media, especially, even if it isn't strictly news related, just things we see our friends doing, things we see others doing, things that we see come across our feed. A lot of news and other things are, gathered that way, as it turns out. And it's just a jungle, because all of it is just happening at such a big rate. We're bombarded by information and by things about not only what we see in the news, but what we see about other people we know, just other people in general. And we sometimes feel like, that the world is just rushing by us and we can never catch up and we're getting left in the dust. And in the meantime, so much of what does grab our attention is fear-inducing. It's a lot about the pandemic. It's a lot about, social and political tensions, that are building. And so much of it is making people fearful, and a lot of it is making many of us not only fearful of the world, we're fearful of each other. We're fearful of, what, being labeled. We're fearful of hearing out the other side. We're fearful about even talking to one another about anything. It's just, and it's so frustrating. And with this pandemic still going on, it just seems like people have kind of been driven apart. They've been fearful, and they've had to, be cautious, only because the realities of the virus having spread is just, something that people have had to try to manage. And sadly, a lot of these fear-mongering, either politicians or experts or so forth, seem to have created and conditioned an environment in which everybody is listening to the fear side of themselves. They're not able to actually act out and take in rationally the information that they need in a way that they know what to do. It doesn't help. It doesn't help that, so much of what we hear about either a pandemic or what we hear about political upheavals makes us fearful, because we need to be able to look at things objectively. We need to be able to sit back, and think as objectively as we can. We don't need to ignore our feelings. We don't need to ignore the fact that fear exists, but it's what we do with it. And unfortunately, people don't have time to do what is normal and rational and sober-minded with the fear that they seem to have, because so much of other fear-triggering things are just hitting you, boom, 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 just over and over again. Because on social media and on news feeds and the way that news is usually presented nowadays, all this headline clickbaited stuff just really doesn't enable people to stop and take in what they need and glean from it the real meat of the issues that are out there, whether it be about the pandemic or about anything else. And on top of that, we're not able to, talk and just, relax around each other anymore. On the autism spectrum, it's never been easy for me to relax around most people. That's always been the case when I was growing up, when I was going through school, when I was experiencing social situations. And it just, it's just kind of, created that deficit in me that I've had to try to overcome. And now I'm an adult living in a situation where I see so much of the media scene, social media or otherwise, just absolutely going crazy, fear mongering, and just an onslaught of triggers. And I guess maybe in some ways it's good that I'm able to recognize how a lot of that, the hysteria of a lot of that, because I can see how in my own head growing up and trying to deal with all the external triggers in the world around me, being on the autism spectrum, I can understand how the overload can be very, very paralyzing. And I'm here to tell you that in spite of the fact that I grew up on the autism spectrum, in spite of the fact that nobody knew or understood it until after I was in college, and the fact that I didn't receive a diagnosis until then, the fact that I, managed to not only get to where I could work and hold a job, the fact that I got to start to live on my own by the time when I was in my 20s, late 20s, I guess, but still, then the fact that not only that, but I found somebody special, a wife, and I got married, the fact that I have steady work now and that I have a house. It doesn't seem like something that could easily happen if you are paralyzed by fear your whole life, as oftentimes I was, and sometimes still am. I'm still paralyzed by fears. I'm still paralyzed by, I still have friendship needs, that I, sometimes don't know, if I'm going about it the right way. Sometimes I don't know if the friends that I have, if I'm really hanging on to them, or if I'm going to lose them sometimes, and that's just a terrible way to live. You have to trust that the friends you have want to keep you as friends, and you got to trust that, and it's not easy to do. Sometimes you just don't know if if the other person's really thinks of you as highly as you hope, and I sometimes worry about, I guess I've always worried about losing friends, and it's sad because even though I know my wife loves me, sometimes I, might be fearful if she's got a problem with me sometimes. And the thing is, maybe sometimes she has things about me that she does have a problem with, but not in the sense that she doesn't love me. And it's sometimes I got to remember that it's easy for me to think that I'm always responsible for others. That's another reason I can be fearful. I always feel responsible for everything and everybody around me, and I don't have to be. And that's easy to do. That's something, but I think that, things are my fault that aren't. Sometimes I worry about the work that I have would become overwhelming, and thankfully it usually doesn't. I have a great job right now. I'm in a good work situation, that I can handle, and I have bosses whom I can lean on, who have my back. Sometimes I worry about plans falling through. And am I really going to face, and are we going to face 2022 in that frame of mind? Because I have to say it's sometimes a daily battle for what, little things in my head, little things I worry about that I wait to find out or wait to know about things that I just described. But I have to remember that if I'm going to be motivated by fear, I'm probably not going to get anywhere, because anything that, if I constantly am fearful, it's really, I have no reward. I have nothing to look forward to in life. And I do worry about how things are going to turn out sometimes. A lot of the time I've worried about that. But a lot of great things have turned out in 2021. And even though I didn't always feel like I could keep believing, I kept going on. I kept doing even, when it seemed like my circumstances couldn't change right away, I did the things I could in the meantime and trusted that they could happen when they can happen. And sure enough, I remember us dealing with things in our old place, that were difficult, things that we had to get fixed and stuff like that. And next thing you know, we got pre-approved for a mortgage. Next thing you know, we're going to bid on houses. I had to wait on whether or not an offer was going to fall through, or if the house we found out that we were going to look at was really the one we should, try to get. And lo and behold. And I even remember the day after I got my COVID vaccine, I got the notification for one house that just came up on my phone. I asked our realtor about it, and we came and looked at it, and it's the house we're living in right now. It's just amazing how things work out. But I guess maybe whatever happens in 2022, I know there are things I could fear. It's fun and it's hard. I've read somewhere, if you're talking about social media, it's hard to, sometimes I worry about how I'm going to be received, if people are going to like my videos, or if they're going to think that I'm just a rambler and that I'm just dull, and stuff like that. But I have to put myself out there, and that's what I'm doing. I heard somewhere that the average teenager today has the same level of anxiety as the average psychiatric patient in the early 50s. And I mean, that just tells you, and it's directly related to social media. I actually need to look into that more, but I gotta be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me, because it just seems like the nature of social media and information in general these days seems to induce that anxiety. It induces fear, because it makes everybody fearful of how they're fitting into the scheme of things. And I feared about that my whole life. But considering the things that have come about in my life, and even the last few very strange years, when there's a pandemic going on, when the housing market was so tight, and it still is, but the fact that great things have happened. And it's just, it's something, sometimes you just got to step back and consider and get the big picture. And although social media may be there, you got to ask yourself, what am I getting out of it? Or am I putting anything into it that's helpful? Maybe that's what I'm doing with videos like this, is to help. And I hope that the videos I do, including this one, help you fear less in 2022. You may not completely get rid of fear. I know I won't. But if I could just fear a little bit less, no matter what it takes, maybe that'll help us get over this hump. Maybe this pandemic hump, maybe whatever other hump you're having to get over in your life. And hopefully, prayerfully, that can happen for me and for you. And so, hey, here's to a less fearful 2022. Happy New Year, and stay tuned. There'll be more videos to come, and also check out my blog. I'll have that in the description as well. Bye.